Welcome once again as we kick things off with John clearing his throat, but maybe we can edit that out in post-production. It doesn't matter. We're here. We're all friends. We're your garden buddies. Welcome once again. This is Garden America. Happy Labor Day weekend. A lot of people, 3 days off. A lot of people retired. Doesn't matter. Weekday, weekend. We are back. I'm Brian Main, John Bagnasco, Tiger Palafox. We've got I was going to say a great show. Not sure. It's going to be a decent show, which maybe will turn into a great show today. Hi, Tiger.
We like to under-promise and over-deliver. Is that where we're going with that?
I think that's where we're going today. It's going to be decent. If it turns into a great show, then we'll all be surprised.
Exactly. Yeah, what a good start already, right?
We got John laughing right off the bat. That's good. So, John, what's going on in your gardening world?
Let's see. Monday, I made an emergency trip to San Diego because
we should tell people you live on the outs. Not like you're in from another state. You do live in the county, right?
Close to another state, right?
Yeah, right.
But you're in the area.
North San Diego County,
okay.
Which is maybe 15 minutes from Riverside County. So
Yeah.
That's a ways.
yeah, it's far north as you can go, except for I think there's Rainbow, right?
And then it hits Temecula.
Then it hits Temecula,
which
right?
is Riverside.
But anyway, I got some budwood for some really rare roses, none of which exist in the United States.
Ooh.
So I called my buddy Bill, who lives in San Diego, and he had some rootstock. So we came down Monday to graft it, and then I took some of the cuttings after we took off the buds because they had calloused over in shipping, and I thought, wow, maybe I can root these.
Okay.
So we took off a bud, budded the plant, and then I took the little cutting that was still left home and put it in, it's one of those little greenhouse things for starting seeds.
Yeah, the little dome.
Yeah,
little plastic.
And they
you just fill it with perlite?
And no, you know what? I use seed starting soil.
Okay.
And 2 weeks before, I had used it to stick in some rose cuttings. Actually, maybe 3 weeks before. And I'm just shocked at like 90% of them have rooted, and I probably put in 100 cuttings. So I've probably got like 90 roses growing.
And they exist nowhere else.
Those were from Del Mar, so they exist in a few places. But the ones I did Monday, I don't even know if those will grow. But I'm hoping.
You know what's funny is I kind of feel the weather we've been having, it's probably more humid outside that little dome thing than inside that little dome thing.
Yeah, it could be.
Because it's been so humid
It's supposed to be
lately.
a humid weekend. Here, temperatures are cooling off, but
Yeah.
they say there's going to be humidity.
Right.
I don't know. Let me tell
But you need to root things, you need 100%.
100%. Yeah.
You know, we talk about humidity here. It doesn't even match the humidity back east, Midwest, Michigan, where John is from. Come on, it's humid, but not like that.
You know what surprised me was I'm trying to think of the scientific name, but do you know the plant? It's called, I think, Persian shield.
Ooh, yeah. Persian shield.
I mean, the name should come to me.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Not Tristania.
No.
I can't remember. No.
Tristanias are huge trees.
Right. What am I thinking of? Okay, keep going. I'll try to think of it.
Anyway,
Persian shield.
they're linear leaves. They're purple and a couple shades of purple. Anyway, they have a tendency to grow tall. In some parts of the country, they use them as houseplants.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been something about that leaf that's always intrigued me. So I saw a plant at, I think it was at Ace Hardware, and I just picked it up, brought it home. But it was probably about one stem, I would say probably a foot tall, maybe even a little taller. So another word for that, the technical word for that, Brian, is leggy.
Yeah.
It's getting a little leggy. We've heard
Right.
that.
So I cut it in half and planted it thinking that it would branch out.
Mm-hmm.
But then the piece that I cut off was so nice that I cut that in half and stuck those two cuttings in the little greenhouse I'm talking to you about.
Yeah.
And both of them rooted within a week.
Whoa.
So those are ready to be planted. And I don't know whether to put them in the ground before I go to Yellowstone because I'm leaving on Saturday,
Yeah.
or whether I should leave them in the greenhouse till I come back. I think I'll leave them in that little greenhouse.
I was going to ask too about that little greenhouse. Do you change the soil
No.
every time? No, you just.
Well, this is
you
the
let
first
that-
time I've used it.
So, but I mean, you put in rose cuttings.
Yeah.
You put in these other cuttings, and now you're going to put in these other rose.
Well, I
cuttings.
haven't taken anything out yet.
So it's always you haven't taken anything out. You're just adding to this.
I have
little-
2 of them, and they have little cells in there, like in a cell pack.
Oh, okay.
So there's
So it's not
probably
a tray that's just full of soil.
no. It's a tray that has this inner pack in it,
Got it. Okay.
and I think they're 5 deep by about 10 wide, so it holds like about 50 different trays.
Do you leave it out there in the full sun, or do you put it in kind of?
No,
a
it's
part
on the
shade?
back patio, just
So-
sitting on the table.
So more of a part. It's
Yeah,
shaded.
it'll get
It's always shaded.
Except late afternoon, it'll get some sun.
Yeah, but well lit, shaded, no direct sun,
Right.
except for in the afternoon
Right.
when the sun is setting, and it comes in
Right.
at the straight angle.
And I soaked all the cuttings overnight in HB 101 before I planted them.
Yeah.
And we'll see if that makes a difference. Another thing I did was there's a rose called Papaya Panarosa, which is really, really pretty, and it's kind of rare in the U.S. The one that I have originally came from South Africa. And I wanted to plant this, and I went out to look at it, I think on Tuesday. I was going to water, and I saw the whole thing had dried up. And it was like a gopher got it.
Ugh.
But it was in a container, so how the gopher got in there, I
Jumped in
don't
there.
know. So it was dead for sure. So I pulled it out of the can, and I'm usually good at anytime a rose gets eaten by a gopher, I can bring it back to life. At least every one I've had.
Resurrection.
Resurrection roses.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So, but on this one, it was a huge plant. So I made probably about 30 or 40 cuttings, and I soaked those overnight in the HB 101 mix, and then put all those in that dome greenhouse I'm talking to you about. I put those in just yesterday, so we'll see what happens.
How big is this greenhouse? Size
Yeah,
of your
really.
Backyard?
What are you talking
It's
about?
the size
Jeez.
of a little flat.
Yeah, jeez.
I'll have to take a picture of it.
Panarosa, what does that mean? I mean, I know what rosa is, and Pana is view, is it not?
Yeah, in South Africa, they used it as marketing.
Oh.
And it might have been one of the Cordas out of Germany marketing plans, but they called Panarosa this group of roses that weren't climbers,
Mm-hmm.
but they were bigger than shrubs.
Ah,
So kind of halfway in between. So they would be big mounding type plants with lots of flowers.
and that refers to the type of rose it is.
Right,
Mounding, shrubby rose.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm like thinking papaya view of a rose.
Well, the view would be because, they're big mounds. you
Yeah.
know. So
Exactly.
Okay,
So
couple
they
of
could
minutes
be used as
before the
hedges or
first
something.
break. We have to get to John's quote of the week, and then we'll tease our guests about, or not our guest, we'll tease our listeners and our viewers
Tease our
about
guest.
our upcoming guest. And when we bring our guest on, if we want to tease him, that's fine.
We could tease him as
That's
well.
fine, too.
Exactly.
The quote of the week is from Peter Mayle, Brian.
Really, Pete?
Yeah, he wrote the book A Year in Provence,
Yeah.
right?
Actually, it was 2 years, but edited down for the book because the book was
The
going to be way
Reader's,
too long.
Reader's Digest version was 6 months. Anyway, there's also a rose extremely fragrant rose called Peter Mayle.
Really?
Yeah, it's in the Romanica series.
Ah.
Anyway, he said, there's nothing I like better at the end of a hot summer's day than taking a short walk around the garden. You can smell the heat coming up from the earth to meet the cooler night air.
I'm going to have to get
Nicely
down and
put.
smell that heat.
Yeah.
I don't do enough heat smelling.
No?
No. But that's a good reminder.
Your heat smelling will involve fragrances of asphalt and
Right.
stuff.
The asphalt jungle. You've heard of that term.
Yeah.
Okay, what about our guest today, Tiger? We've got about a minute to go.
Yeah, we're going to have Nick Davis, farmer from the Central Valley, joining us to give us an update on how their season is going. It's always kind of neat to hear, from the experts, what's happening in the world, what's happening in the industry, and it's been a unique year for California. So we'll hear about how the almonds and grapes.
He's
and
a
other,
pecan and grape farmer, isn't he?
yeah, and almonds. Yeah, so he can give us an update on a lot of
Right.
crops this year.
Okay. And with that said, we've got John's quote out of the way. We're going to take a break. Our first segment. Want to welcome those tuned in listening on Biz Talk Radio. We do appreciate you. And, of course, all you fine folks on Facebook Live, thank you for tuning in. Tell your friends, tell your family, anybody else you know to tune into the show if they're into gardening. So with that in mind, we're going to take a break. Back after these messages as we turn to our good friends on Biz Talk Radio. Okay, Garden America is back live on air. If you're watching us live, that is. Biz Talk Radio, pre-recorded show, so thank you for that. Always like to thank the good folks at Biz Talk Radio, Stephanie, Ryan, and the rest of the team who keep us on the air nationally each and every week. With that in mind, our guest is ready to go. Nick is on the phone. Tiger, let's do it.
Yeah, and before we bring Nick on, I just wanted to mention Persian Shield, Strobolanthus.
Right.
Yes.
Thanks to our good friend Lila and Poway for letting us know that.
Yeah, so if anybody's interested in what that plant was, Strobolanthus Persian Shield.
Also, Veronica wanted to know where I got the greenhouse dome. My wife actually bought it for a failed attempt to do something with seeds. She germinated them. They all germinated fine, but
Is it a Jiffy one?
no.
No?
No.
Oh.
But she did get it on Amazon.
Okay. Yeah, like they'll be like little greenhouse domes. Nick, thank you for waiting patiently. So this morning we have Nick Davis from Davis Vineyards, located in Madera, California, which is up near Fresno. Nick, thank you for joining us this morning. How you doing?
Good. Good morning, guys.
Yeah, Nick,
Having me.
it's been a while since we've had you on. I think it's almost been exactly a year. A lot has happened. First off, though, before we get into getting an update on how the Central Valley farming is going, give us a little bit of background from you and your farm. Now, this is a family farm, a family vineyard, a family orchard that you guys have had for a number of years, right?
Right. So we're a family business in Central California near Fresno, and we farm almonds and wine grapes. And we've been doing that for a few generations now. We're like a medium-sized farm. We're not too big, not too small, but we still have our challenges with everything else that large and small growers have.
Sounds like a Goldilocks farm. Not too big, not too small, just right.
Just right.
Yeah, just right. And Nick, over the years, your family has, I think kind of focused a little bit on grapes, but being in the Central Valley, it's, a wide range of different other things that have been, that people do farm, right? So kind of where you're at, is it mostly just grapes and almonds, or what other kind of crops are near you?
Yeah, we have almonds, wine grapes. We grow processing tomato. We don't grow, but in our area, processing tomatoes, table grapes, a lot of pistachios. There's some kiwi. There's a lot of dairies in our neck of the woods. So there's row crops such as silage corn and winter wheat and grain.
Wow. So just a always something happening there, right? Isn't that the whole thing of farming? You're always going from one thing to the next. You don't ever want to wait. You got to keep it going, especially here in California, where it's almost, we have a 12-month growing cycle, right?
Right. In our neck of the woods, our family's diversified into almonds and wine grapes, but my grandparents farmed. They were in the dairy business for 45 years, and so they grew all the crops associated with dairy feed. And then growing and farming dairy cattle wasn't the easiest thing, and they got out of that in the 80s. And then, thankfully, because that's a really struggling, challenging industry to be a part of for a lot of different reasons. But now we've just sort of grown all the different crops you could and landed on farming wine grapes and almonds. That's kind of what our operation is designed for now. With the knowledge we've gained over the years, our team as well as the equipment we have is set up for almonds and wine grapes.
Yeah, we took a summer trip this past summer, Nick, with my family, and we went into Wisconsin, and it was interesting. We went to the Capitol. I learned a lot about the history of
You talking
Wisconsin.
Madison?
Yeah. And I mean, obviously I knew Wisconsin cheese, right? I mean, they're dairy farm, Wisconsin. And Wisconsin was one of the first farming states in the United States. It was very much associated with farming. But
think cheese.
You think cheese, and then like Nick mentioned, because of the cows, you've got to have everything associated with cows. You got to have wheat, you got to have corn, all those other crops. And then I'm kind of like, why? I wonder what happened here, like what changed. But then it's like, well, they can only grow things for so many months out of the year. The other months, frozen tundra, freezing, they have to put on pause. Where in California, you're just on this kind of endless, cycle of different things, different times, and so I'm sure it was much better in California to be able to kind of grow things that long. But this year, Nick, it's been a little bit of a challenge, right? We've had that really wet winter, which, I remember following you early on in the year. You guys were very hopeful and, optimistic about, having all of that rain. And how has that affected you guys now going into the harvest time of year?
Yeah, this winter was a really real blessing for us. I mean, we've been doing our rain dance for a long time, and surely it delivered this last winter so much that a lot of farmers, including ourselves, recharged a lot of that surface water that came down from the Sierra Nevada mountains. We were able to recharge it and put it back in our groundwater and replenish our aquifers. So a fantastic opportunity for farmers this winter. Now that was a real blessing, and we were singing our praises then. Unfortunately, since then, as wonderful as that was, the summer has been mild. The spring was mild. We had a late ending winter, and that's pushed back dormancy for a lot of the plants we grow, the crops we grow here in the Central Valley. What's special about the Central Valley is we get a lot of heat, and we haven't got that yet. We're not going to get it. And what that does is just it slows down the active growing season of a plant, right? So we've accumulated less growing degree days, and a growing degree day is the time above a temperature threshold that the plant is actively growing. So we had less of that. So our plants haven't matured as they should have in previous years. If we peg this year against last year's growing degree days or growing season, we're about 3 weeks behind. And 3 weeks behind is significant. It's the biggest discrepancy in a growing season that I can remember, and that a lot of farmers can remember also. And what that does is delay maturity. But the other caveat here is the amount of humidity that we've had. That's just been so detrimental to our plants and allowed fungus to thrive. And so now we're battling fungal issues and plant maturity issues.
Wow, we're going to have to take a break here in about another 45 seconds, Nick. But, that's amazing to hear that 3 weeks. To most people, 3 weeks is really nothing. But, I mean, obviously you're saying it's a significant challenge for you guys these 3 weeks to be able to be the difference between being able to harvest something or leave it on the vine or leave it on the tree.
Yeah, also, now, what does that mean as we go to the grocery stores later on in a couple of 2 or 3 months, too?
Exactly.
We'll be behind schedule. People will be saying, well, how come you don't have this in?
Yeah.
How come this hasn't shipped yet? And I think that's what Nick is talking about, right, Nick?
Right.
Yeah, and when we get back from the break, we will continue chatting with Nick Davis with Davis Vineyards, getting our farm update.
Right, those on Facebook Live, a lot of people tuned in this morning. If you have any questions for Nick or one of us, please feel free to do that. As we continue, thank you for joining us here on Garden America. We're going to take a break for our national affiliates on Biz Talk Radio. Stay with us. All righty, we are back. Thank you. Those on Biz Talk Radio. Always a big thanks to everybody involved here. Facebook Live, Biz Talk Radio, John Bignasco, Brian Main. Tiger Palafox is with us. Thank you, Tiger. You were with us last week, too. Nick is our guest this morning as we continue talking about farming in California here, Tiger.
Yeah, and before the break, Nick was just giving us an update on how right now in the Central Valley, a lot of the farms, and I think were you just referring to grapes, or were you referring to grapes and almonds, Nick, when you were saying that you're 3 weeks behind in the production and being able to harvest these?
Well, wine grapes primarily, but if you just think of a growing year, some crops require less time to mature, right? So for silage corn, you can get 2 harvests in a single year. You can get 2 plantings. But for wine grapes, different varieties need different growing degree days. The later varieties like Cabernet Sauvignon, Ruby Red need more time to grow and mature. So those are really delayed.
Okay. And so as Brian had mentioned, this whole delay, this is something that's going to affect us all down the road. When it comes to when it comes to the wine grapes, this has to do with quality of wine. This has to do with production. I mean, if we don't have enough grapes, they won't be able to produce enough wine. So these are things for wine. What are we looking at? This is something that will affect the market in a year or two, this year, when it comes to just the wine.
Well, probably next year, right? So a vintage is, the year of the harvest is a vintage date. So this would be 2023 vintage date.
Okay.
And the white wines will be delivered probably early in March, April, hit the shelves. And then the reds will come later in the year, next year probably. But like you said, the quality of fruit, right? So us as growers sell our wine grapes to wine buyers, larger wine companies. And if they receive less quality fruit, the winemaking teams have to pull out the magic to adjust acidity or deal with lower sugar grapes, which is directly related to the alcohol content in wine. There are also the problematic botrytis or bunch rot that we have in our wine grapes. Those produce VA, volatile acidity, which is really hard to remove from the juice. In fact, it's impossible, so they have to blend it down with other good juice. So all these variables really matter on the winemaking side, and they're the real magicians.
Hey, Nick, let me ask you this. Does this fall in line when people talk about wines and they'll say, oh, that was a 65, it was a very good year? Is that what they're referring to in terms of the farming and kind of what we're talking about this morning?
Right. We always hear the word terroir, right? Well, the terroir are the environmental conditions in that year affecting and directly affecting the vineyard, the juice and the maturity of grapes and berries. So, 65 was a great year. Like, what are they going to say about 2023?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what came to mind.
And now also, table grapes, that's happening right now. That's a thing that's, affecting you today, right? Because, table grapes are something that they're going to harvest right now. They're going to send out to the grocery stores, and, that's what you're currently buying in the grocery stores at this moment. So if the table grapes are not being harvested or they're late, that's what Brian had kind of mentioned. Like, that's this moment in time, direct to consumer having issues.
Can you imagine somebody sitting down with somebody? You got 20 minutes? Let me explain what's going on. Kind of like what we're talking about this morning.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And so, obviously, you said this was an extreme year. 3 weeks is more than you have ever experienced. A lot of farmers have ever experienced. So now kind of working towards the end of your harvest, yesterday when we were talking on the phone, you were also saying that there's not a lot of hot weather left in the year. So this can affect you, people, it could not just be 3 weeks behind schedule. It could be almost like not existent, right?
Yeah, right. So when you look at the forecast next week in the Central California, it's upper 80s. And, wine grapes need heat to mature. But the problem is we need early season heat, right? So we don't need it right now. Well, the thing is we can't catch up, right? It's really hard to catch up this time of year, almost impossible. So the strategy really is it's kind of like a Hail Mary for a wine grape farmer. You know, we have some varieties that are more susceptible to rot than others. The later maturing varieties, the varieties with thin skin, with larger berries, like what we call French Colombard, which goes into a generic white wine and California white wine. These varieties are rotting, and so they're not accumulating sugar. So our strategy now is to irrigate a whole lot less, almost not at all, and promote physical dehydration, which will reduce the water content in the berry and increase the sugar content, just so we can make sugar that is minimally required by the winery in our contract. So that's the strategy, right? Is okay, so now we have to sacrifice some yield, which we're okay with because the consequences may be getting a rejected load or a rejected field, which would be catastrophic to us.
Yeah.
So the strategy has changed because we don't believe there's any, well, not that we don't believe there isn't. There just isn't enough heat left in the year to mature these berries. And as we get closer to the end of the year, we get into that window of early rain season. So it's a tough time for us.
Yeah, definitely sounding like it. Switch a little bit over here to almonds. You know, when we're talking grapes and we're talking vining plants and, you know, now switching into a tree where, you know, it's got this deep saturation. You know, obviously we talked about the flowering cycle of a tree and then that turning into an almond. What were some of the challenges this year with the almonds?
Well, the winter we had was pretty, you know, record breaking of, you know, as far as rainfall, and this is the type of weather we had in California. Not so much Central Valley, but we had snow on top of the almond blooms up in northern Sacramento, and that's during a bloom period. And I was mentioning to you, I think yesterday, that an almond with only 20% of the blooms on an almond tree is a maximum potential for fruit set. So if you get a flower bloom that is pollinated by a bee in the first 24 hours after it's ready for pollination, then you can expect a 20% net set, which is fantastic. If it's 2 days, you're looking at probably less than 10%. In 3 days, you're looking at around 1 or 2% fruit set. So when the folks up north, the almond growers up north, had snow on their trees, clearly they had a problem and they were going to have great pollination.
Yeah.
All the rain that we had down here in the Central Valley also inhibited and didn't help us any with pollination. So if I had a crystal ball, I would say, okay, the fruit set this year on almonds was minimum or maybe a little bit better, which means the tree has less nuts to set, which means that there's less sinks, you know, energy stealers hanging on the tree, which means there's going to be more vegetative growth. Now, in this season, which we see all over the place, all of our trees they're just growing. So now going into next year, all those trees will set more fruit because growing an almond is a 2-year cycle, and so that's what we anticipate next year: just big trees, more fruit, more nuts.
And so it's kind of, you know, I mean, it's kind of crazy to think. I mean, when you see an almond orchard and you see it in full bloom, I mean, obviously it's just absolutely gorgeous. You know, just seeing all those flowers and. Yeah. You know, it looks like snow, and it's amazing. But only 20%, and that's like a prime number. That's like a optimal situation, Nick. 20% of those flowers are actually going to turn into a fruit, and that requires a bee to pollinate it within that first 24 hours. Otherwise, you know, it drops down to 7. You know, if you wait 48, that's amazing. You know. I don't know. I just don't feel people ever think of nature moving that quick. But, I mean, that's pretty neat to know that, like, it moves that quick.
It's
but it's also scary because
very delicate balance.
Yeah. And you guys do try to encourage pollination by using things like beehives during that time of year, right?
Oh, yeah. You know, we start, you know, California produces 80% of the world's supply of almonds. And so the beekeepers from all over the United States flood into Central California, Northern California to pollinate. And, you know, we usually, you know, how many hives the grower puts out per acre on their almond blocks is really at the discretion of the farmer. It's a very expensive process. So, you know, farmers want to do as minimal as possible.
Yeah.
But we 1.5 hives per acre, maybe 1 hive per acre on a really young orchard, or maybe 2 or 2.5 hives per acre is kind of the thinking. And the hives cost farmers anywhere from say $195 to $220 a hive.
Wow. Hey, Nick, sorry to interrupt, but we do have to take another little break right now, a little pause. When we get back from our break, we will continue chatting with Nick Davis.
All right, do stay with us, obviously, unless you have someplace to go. But you can also watch this show this afternoon as we upload our shows from this studio right here to our YouTube channel, Garden America Radio Show. So if you missed anything, you can go back and you can rewatch. Or if you missed something altogether, you can watch it for the first time. Going to take a break for our friends on Biz Talk Radio. Do stay with us. Back with Nick after these messages. We are back from our break. Facebook Live, thank you for tuning in. The same can be said for you on Biz Talk Radio. As we continue Garden America, I'm Brian Main, John Begnasco, Tiger Palafox. Back to you, Tiger. This is our final segment, hour number 1 for Biz Talk Radio. News coming up top of the hour. We come back for hour number 2 at 6 minutes after.
Yeah, and Nick, before the break, you had mentioned something that I wanted to hit on a little bit more. And it's kind of this, I think people have some misconceptions about farmers, because in the world, there's a lot of bad press when it comes to farming, using water, using fertilizers, and all of these things. But in reality, farmers are trying to do the most minimal impact possible, because that all costs money. I mean, you just mentioned with these bees. I mean, to bring in these beehives for these almond fields, that costs money. So if you can get good production without bringing in the beehives, you're going to do that because you don't want to spend that money. If you don't have to water your field, you're not just throwing water on there to throw water on there, because again, that costs money. Same with fertilizer, same with use of pesticides or anything of that nature. So this almost farmers are trying to do as minimal as possible in so many of these things, right? I mean, because you would love to just be able to have a farm, have it grow by itself, and just harvest and not have to worry about all those other side things that you kind of need to be able to produce fruit, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, who wants to waste money, right? I mean, farming is a capital intensive game. And we want to do spend as minimal as possible. I mean, we all hear about we're spending $5 a gallon of gas up here, sometimes more. I'm sure same for you. But that translates into everything, right? In diesel for tractors, when you have to send a mechanic out, a third-party mechanic to come out to the ranch, they're going to charge you $180 an hour just to come out and drive their vehicle because on their time. I mean, wages go up. I mean, the whole game is just extremely expensive. And there's so many variables. And we just try our hardest to get maximum production for minimal input.
Yeah. And so, being in California, I started off the program kind of saying we were on this, endless cycle of growing and harvesting and growing and harvesting. You growing up there, being from Madera and seeing this firsthand your whole life and being involved with small farms and big farms, what are some things that you have seen change over the years when it comes to, production or being able to kind of use technology in farms now?
Well, technology is a really wonderful thing. The challenge is where I think farmers can get in trouble, including ourselves, is when you go head first and just adopt it, all of it, right? I mean, each farm, even though we're all farmers, we all farm a little differently. We all have things that make the farm more successful than others, or vice versa. So it's our strategy to adopt technology slowly, right? So introduce some technology into the business. For example, soil moisture probes. Okay, that seems like that's something we can do. But we have 1,000 acres, right? So do we just roll out to all 1,000 acres? That would be a bad decision. I've been a part of those decisions before, and you can't keep up with what's going on with the sensors. You have to spend a lot of time sitting at your computer at the desk, referring to the dashboard to find out what the sensors are doing. So technology has to complement the operation rather than interrupt it. And so adopting that technology is a slow process for us. But we do the best we can, and we know it's a part of our program. Just we do it slowly.
Yeah. I kind of feel another way to, say a farmer is a lot like a fisherman. I mean, fishermen leave all out of the same port with the same goal. They are a tuna fisherman, they're a salmon fisherman, they're, whatever it is that they're going, they're all leaving out of the same port, and they're all going to come back to that same port. But some go left, some go right, some go straight.
Yep.
But it's all their strategy. They're all their, kind of technique. And so, you got farmers out there that have been doing it for so many years in their way. And if they've got success, they don't change anything. And they keep it going the way it is and maybe adopt slowly to make changes that they see would benefit them. But overall, they got to keep that line going to be able to be successful.
We got a couple of questions. John, do you want to address those?
Well, yeah, Carla in Huntington Beach has the same question that I was thinking of as Nick was talking about his almond harvest. And Carla says, so Nick, are you saying we should stock up on our almond flour and almond butter now to get us through next year?
Oh, that's a great question. So This is why it's such a great question, because what consumers buy is not always what's happening to the farmer. So farmers right now are getting paid $1. Let's use last year's numbers, okay? Just because that's all the numbers are. Our family business received about $1.72 per pound of almonds. So my question to that gentleman is, what is he paying per pound of almonds in the store? And it's probably quite a bit. But to the grower, the consumer will say, that's an $8 a pound. That grower is getting rich. Man, we're getting $1.72. And so the industry has an issue right now with retail because retail is keeping the prices high when we want the prices lowered so we can move backed up inventory or carry over inventory, if that makes sense. So to answer the question, I don't think you have to worry about stocking up. There's going to be plenty because there's actually a little oversupply in the marketplace than before. So I wouldn't worry about stocking up. Rather, talk to the retailer about saying, hey, drop these prices so they reflect what the grower's getting paid.
Yeah. And then you had also said next year your production is going to probably be pretty high. So then you're going to have this huge flux of almonds back into the market again, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so a quick question to I know we have another question, but so we just talked about grapes, they're table grapes, that's the season. They get harvested, they go to your table.
So you want to know, should you stock up on wine?
Yeah,
that's what you want to know.
But almonds, I mean, they can be stored, right? So it's not always the same thing for year after year. If you have a short year on almond, but they still have, storage bins full of them, how many years can an almond be stored, or how long can an almond be stored? Oh, do we have to take a break? Hey, Nick, when we get back, I'll have you answer that question.
Yeah, our break is for our friends on Biz Talk Radio. News coming up straight up top of the hour. We're back at 6 minutes after. Hopefully you can catch one or both hours there on Biz Talk Radio. And, of course, you can go to our Facebook page every Saturday morning, 8 o'clock on the West Coast, 11 o'clock, that's 11 a.m. Eastern Time Zone, to watch and interact with us live. That said, news coming up, Biz Talk Radio. We are back on both Biz Talk, Facebook Live very shortly. Do stay with us. We trust you had a great break, because I know we did. Biz Talk Radio, Facebook Live, and we are back as we continue our conversation. This is Garden America broadcasting live every single weekend for the most part here, the iHeart Radio studios. media and entertainment, and radio, Tiger. We cover it all here, streaming, digital, you name it. We're talking about, farming in California in particular. We're talking about grapes and almonds. Nick is with us, Tiger, as we continue. And, of course, the questions that keep coming on Facebook Live.
Yeah, Nick Davis with Davis Vineyards. Before the break, Nick, I'd asked you, how long can an almond be stored? And I'm sure there's probably a lot of different ways to store it. But when people are talking about, seasons directly affecting the market in the sense of, shortages or surpluses, what do you guys do you guys work on a 1-year thing, or is it a couple years that you look out? What do you do there?
We try to do it within one year. Oh. So in the past years, the market has been successful at selling almonds in 12 months, right, in preparation for the next season. And sometimes the months leading up to harvest, nuts are pre-sold, right? So that 2023 crop is pre-sold, which is exciting. Now, in this last year, we've had about 700 million pounds carryover, which hurts the market because there's the new crop coming. But as far as storage goes, remember that a nut has oil content, right? So oil can oxidize and go rancid, but they're stored really well, so they can last quite a bit. And if you buy almonds from the store, feel free. You want to keep them for a long time, feel free to put them in your freezer. That's a good place to slow down the rancidity. But about a year.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
I never thought of freezing almonds.
Yeah,
that's a good idea. A good tip, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did we have more questions, or did we hit them?
Well, let's see. Veronica in Spring Valley wanted to know what kind of fertilizers you use on your crops, and do you mulch the trees?
We do mulch the trees whenever we develop. We do mulch the trees, and also when we winter prune, we leave the prunings in the middle of the orchard, and we mulch them to leave that material back in the ground to increase our organic matter. Now, as far as fertilizer goes, one of our favorites is called UN32. It's a urea ammonium nitrate, and so there's 32% nitrogen. It's a liquid form, and we apply it through a drip irrigation system, so we don't have to run a tractor and equipment and through the orchard. What's special about that fertilizer is it's got some immediately released fertilizer, some nitrogen, so it's immediately available to the plant, as well as slow-release fertilizer. So as it breaks down in the soil through microbial activity, it is released to the tree.
Wow. Do you guys do soil tests annually to kind of see if there's been any kind of changes from year to year, or is it kind of consistent? Do you just do them every so often to figure out if you're missing anything?
Well, it's kind of like how do you drive to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
You probably take the same route almost every time because it's the shortest path. You know what to expect, and you just have a good idea of what to expect. So over time, as you farm almonds in your own fields, you know what the soil can do, what the plant can do, what the water can do. So you kind of get in a rhythm. But we do soil test and tissue sample every year just to make sure that we're on par with what think of how much money we're spending per acre. So an $80 soil test is going to say, hey, we're on base or off base. Yeah. And some farmers will say, I don't want to spend the $60 or $40 to $80 a test. And at the end of the day, we're spending a whole lot more than that on fertilizer. So a test to confirm what you're doing is right is it's a good practice.
Yeah, I could save you thousands for sure. Do we have any more questions?
Well, we had a comment from Kevin in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and he says, God bless the beekeepers. And he was wondering, Nick, if there's any problem with the health of the bees that you're using for pollination. I know that, in past few years we've talked about colony collapse disorder and things like that. But what about the bees that the beekeepers are bringing to you? Are they just as healthy as they've always been?
Well, the only thing I can say about that is beekeepers, God bless the beekeepers, agree with that. They have a real challenge. They're dealing with live animals, live insects, right? And they are more challenging, I think, than anything to keep safe and keep mites off of them and disease and everything else. And they come in from all over the place. So their Florida bees come over to us. We get bees that are stored in Montana and the Dakotas that come to us. But as far as like the growing side, like as farmers, we recognize how important and valuable bees are, and bees fly during the day. So if we have to spray anything, the practice we have is we notify the beekeeper and we spray at night so that we don't interrupt any of the flight cycles or minimize the harm we do to bees. But we're all in the same boat, the beekeepers, the almond growers, and we just try to be responsible and take care of each other's, babies, more or less.
Yeah.
So, Nick, if you're using bees from Florida, does that mean you have to bring them out of retirement?
Yeah, they get cold. They're not. When they leave Florida and they travel over here by truck over to California,
Right.
It's like, wow, it's cold in California. The almond bloom is right around. It's always usually around Valentine's Day. Is usually what I say.
So
So it's
February,
cold
that is
that month.
cold. It is cold, right? Coming from Florida, that'd be
Yeah.
quite a shock.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, so much information, Nick. And it's just crazy to hear from firsthand people involved with what's happening with farming, with what's happening in the Central Valley, and different things. So to cut to a good point though is, farmers are doing their best. They're trying to be as responsible as possible. They have their challenges from year to year. Recommend people buy local, try to or at least support local United States farmers. Because we try to do our best as far as production wise and caring for the environment. So in this year is going to be one of those years. I mean, if you can support the local grape farmer, local almond farmer, know that it was a tough year for them, and try to do your best when you're shopping to look for something made and produced in California, right, Nick?
Yeah, right. I mean, if you're buying almonds in your stores, there's a 99% chance that they came from California. So just feel good knowing that when you're buying almonds, you're buying it from California, and you're supporting growers who are making strong efforts to improve the sustainability aspect, right? By groundwater recharge. Not every farmer is doing that, right? But the game is changing, right? And so consumer pressure is helping support that change, and the farmers that are supporting consumers are making the change, like our family.
Yeah.
So just keep doing what you're doing and look for that Madera label, or at least that California label, and that's fantastic. And also, if you have any customer or any followers that want to learn more about farming almonds and wine grapes and kind of how we're doing it here in Central California, they can always follow my Instagram page. I don't have a Facebook page, but I do have an Instagram page, which is _Davis, Nick Davis _ Nick Davis _ and they can learn a lot about farming in the Central Valley by following me.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Nick, and have a good rest of the weekend. Have a good Labor Day weekend. I know you probably don't get any days off, but you take care and get some rest.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks, guys. You guys have a good afternoon. Take care.
Okay, will do.
Yeah, his Instagram is a lot of fun to follow because he does give you little videos, little snippets of information whether it comes to farming, watering, owls and preventing gophers and bees, and it's a fun thing to follow to see what's happening out there in the farming world.
And Carla's mentioning too, just with us as sort of small farmers in gardening,
Yeah.
Can you imagine on Nick's level? Because look at the challenges we face in our little backyards and patios and land and what he's dealing with. How do you sleep at night?
Well, we were just talking with John about his little greenhouse.
Yeah.
How many plants you have in that little greenhouse, John?
About 100.
Okay. He's got 100 little plants in this greenhouse that's right off of his back porch that he can go out and look at every day and, see if it's dry, see if it's wet, and it's a lot of fun. And, it's really cool that he gets to do that. Nick is working with hundreds of acres.
Right.
He doesn't, and he's got to drive around and check on these. And
anytime you have to drive around your property to check on your growing material, yeah, that's a lot of space and a lot of area to
and
cover.
You can't get from one to the next in the same day.
By the way, I did a quick calculation. 1,000 acres at $200 a beehive is $200,000 just for bees.
Just for bees.
Just for the bees. And on that note, we're going to take a break. Oh, don't go anywhere. Do stay with us. A lot more of Garden America is still ahead, both on Biz Talk Radio and Facebook Live. Again, Brian Main, John Bagnasco, Tiger Palafox. Thank you for joining us on your Labor Day weekend. We are back, quick as a bunny, as some say. A little bit longer on, a little bit longer on Biz Talk Radio. We want to thank you for supporting our sponsors, Fertilome, of course, and our other sponsor with Root Warrior.
Yep.
And the website is plantwarrior.com, right?
Yep.
It is. That's it. Root Warrior, Plant Warrior, and, of course, Fertilome. Thank you.
I ordered some Root Warriors.
Nice.
Oh, did you? Nice. You're
Yes,
going to like
coming
them.
to my house. I'm going to try it.
How about that? And those listening and those watching, hopefully you'll do the same thing. It does help us when you support our sponsors, and it's good to know that we use the products we talk about.
Yeah, I mean, just the other day, last show, I think I mentioned about a situation that I used one in where the pot just filled up with water, and it just didn't have drainage capacity. It didn't have the ability to drain from the drain
So
hole.
you took
just
care of
because it was
that.
clogged up, but the Root Warrior solved that problem.
You do understand that we are influencers. That's the new thing now.
Yeah.
Whether you're on Facebook, whether you're doing a radio show, if you're selling or endorsing a product, by golly, John, you're an influencer.
That sounds like a mafia thing. You're an influencer.
They're coercers.
Yeah.
Coercers, I like that.
Right.
That's good.
We'll be influencers, not coercers.
Excellent.
Are we caught up on all the questions?
I think,
You know what I saw
So-
yesterday, by the way, Brian?
hold on.
You texted me a picture of your plumeria,
I
right?
did. Yes, I did.
And I went out and checked mine again, and I still don't have leaves on.
You said yours was just starting, right?
Some are just starting, yeah, but this one doesn't have leaves, but it's just starting with the flower bud.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what mine did this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, the one you gave me, which is outside of the patio, the same thing happening. No leaves, but flowers now starting to develop.
This is the end of summer,
Well,
though.
I'm going to say,
summer's all over.
At what point do you reach where you go, you're just not going to bloom this year?
See, I don't panic because I've had years where I've had no leaves on my plumeria,
Due to lack of water and care.
and they still did fine.
Yeah. You just leave them alone. Plants did very well without us for a lot of years.
Yeah.
So-
I mean, that's how they adapted. You talk about plumeria and how it stores water and all of that stuff in the stem, and how that stem can just fall to the ground and regrow.
Yeah, exactly.
It's shocking, amazing, really neat.
Shocking.
Hey, Lisa on our Facebook feed says that she's got some root warriors for her raised beds.
Oh, those are good. Nice.
She calls them foot warriors.
Well, then she corrected
Yeah,
and
that
said she
was
meant
right.
root.
That's funny, and that's good. Yeah, it's a good product. It's the first time that we'd heard of it, and we brought them on a few months ago. So,
Well, if
there
you go to their website, you can see the whole theory.
yeah, plantwarrior.com,
Right, yeah.
and find out aeration right underneath there
Yep.
for the roots.
Yeah.
They're cones. They look like traffic cones.
It's funny, she mentioned raised beds because a lot of people will use those metal water troughs for raised beds.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And they only have like usually one or two holes out of the bottom of that
Right.
that would allow it to drain. But it's really good. People don't realize how important it is to have aeration in the soil. I mean,
And it gets all the underground bacteria. It's almost like opening up a passageway for them, right?
Yeah, and we talk about how floodwater has oxygen. That's why you don't see all of the death afterwards. But when there's no oxygen in that mucky, muddy stuff, that's where you see all that bacteria growing.
Rainwater, not floodwater.
What?
Rainwater.
Rainwater.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when you have that odor of decomposing material, that's where your roots of your plants are going to have problems, and they need that aeration, they need that drainage in order to really be successful.
Odor of decomposing material. That was a metal band back in the 70s, I think, John, wasn't it?
Their hit.
Yeah,
What was their number one hit?
Floodwaters are rising.
Yeah, but yeah. What else?
We got Kim. I fail at plumerias, and I'm reading this cold here. While moving once, I broke off a limb. I threw it across the yard. I was so mad. Forgot about it. Plumeria died. Several months later, I found the arm, threw it across the yard. Full bloom. True story.
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead and try to kill me.
Yeah, exactly. The plumerias are fascinating plants for sure.
I think I told you guys the story about the last houseplant craze.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, after the 70s.
No, in the 70s.
Okay.
In the 70s. And back then it was, I think Jerry Baker wrote a book called Plants Are Like People. And you're relating plants and telling he's the one who first started, talk to your plants and stuff like that, made it popular.
Play music.
Right. And so I told my Italian grandmother, who was trying to grow, what was it? A gardenia. Everyone in the Midwest loves gardenias.
Yeah.
And you try to grow them as houseplants. Gardenias aren't easy to grow.
No,
period,
not in
right?
general. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
But you get one to bloom in Michigan, and it's on your windowsill, and you've got that nice fragrance.
The whole block throws a party for you.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, so my grandmother's gardenia was not doing well, and I said, "Grandma, you have to talk to it." And she looked at me skeptically, like, "No." And I said, "No, really. You're supposed to talk to your plants. It helps them." Well, a month later, I went over to her house, and this gardenia's in full bloom. And I said, "Did you talk to it?" She goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, what did you say?" She said, "I told it, if you don't bloom, I'm going to throw you out in the snow."
So basically what you're saying is you can threaten them.
Yeah, I guess so.
In some cases, they will
I don't think
respond.
that was the idea, but it worked for her.
Well, I know they've had studies playing classical music to your plants versus rock music, and they'll say, "No, these plants here, they like heavy metal. These plants are into classical music." So
I have
Just like people.
there was a record, an LP that came out in the 70s called Music to Grow Plants By. And it was,
Designed for
playing for your plants.
garden.
Yeah. Supposedly it was the music that plants would like best. Plants,
they
in that
did that-
study, plants did not do well under heavy metal.
Because it had to do with the vibrations. Or
I think it's
something, right? Isn't that
vibration.
what they said.
I'm not really sure.
I think it's vibration. But yeah, the heavy metal, that's a lot of vibration.
Yeah.
That's a lot of vibration.
Makes you angry.
Angry rock, we called it.
Yeah. If you were to grow optimally, Brian, what music would be playing for you? Like
Probably classic rock.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's what we grew up on.
Yeah.
Not folk?
Yeah.
What, not folk music?
Yeah.
No.
See, I used to like folk music with a message. It was back in the hippie days, and
Yeah.
a lot of messages back then.
You know what's funny about going back and listening to music that I used to listen to, and I'm listening to it again now, is now I'm hearing the words.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, well, that's a good song. Why didn't I really hear those words the first time around, back in the 60s or 70s or whatever? Now it's like, wow, that's a good song. Or I'll think, that guy's got a really good voice. Well, yeah, I've heard this guy for
voice,
years,
yeah,
or
no.
this female artist, but I think it's a sense of gaining appreciation as you get older, and you hear things differently. Your perception and your concept of certain things changes, and I think in my case, music is one of those.
Well, my thought always was that the most important part of a song was the words, because otherwise it's music.
Yeah.
So if it's going to be a song, the
But you know
lyrics are important.
That's interesting, because studies have shown that women really listen to the words, and men are more melody and the overall feel of the song. Yeah. So you're an exception to the rule, which is good.
You're in touch.
We have to take a break.
All right.
John is in touch with the lyrics.
With my feminine side?
Yeah. Absolutely. We all should be. All right, those on Facebook Live. Lots going on. Questions, comments, let us know. We're going to take a break for Biz Talk Radio. This is Garden America. And we are back. During the break, I read a comment from Kevin. And it says, we're hoping that Brian will play Wipeout on the drums for us live someday in studio. Yeah. He's referring to a time back in high school when I played the drums for the entire school in the gymnasium.
Yeah?
And
I knew
played
drums, or did you just play the drums?
No, I played the drums then.
You actually knew them?
Yeah, I knew how to play the drums. I played that, and I played Hawaii 5-0. Gosh, surf music. Who'd have thunk here in San Diego?
And Wipeout's a tough drum solo, isn't it? Right? Yeah.
That's what it is. Did that come across even maybe? I don't know.
I don't know.
I heard it.
Mic down.
John,
Yeah.
and you could recognize that, right?
Right.
Easy.
I didn't hear you scream wipeout at the end.
Anyway, I do believe that's what Kevin's referring to.
Lenore made the comment that maybe plants are more than what we think. A lot of studies have been done in the last few years about communication between plants, and that plants are able, in some forests, able to communicate through their root systems from one plant to another.
Yeah.
And they can put out, I don't know if they're pheromones or what, to tell a plant when it's being attacked, to warn the other plants that this is going on. And so those plants will begin to produce different chemicals to fight off whatever the problem is that's heading their way.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it's kind of like if, you're sick and you're telling everybody else, hey, I'm sick, stay back.
Right.
And then those people start taking their vitamins or eating well or getting sleep to be able to get better, where when we tell people we're sick, we just like, whatever.
Well, we know that if
plants are
there's
smarter.
We know that if there's a water source underground, that many plants or trees, the roots will grow toward that source.
I find that shocking.
They'll
right?
find it.
Find it.
So it's no surprise that
Yeah.
if a plant or a tree can do that, they can communicate with another tree and say, "Hey, over here, you're about 5 feet short. It's over here."
I find that, astonishing in the sense of the roots are growing through this rock and soil and everything, and they have a goal in mind. They're getting to that.
You know what the
spot.
goal is? Survive.
Well, no, they have. It is, but I mean,
right. I know what you're saying.
But they're not just growing randomly. They know where they're heading. They know they're heading to, like what you just said, that water source or whatever, maybe that nutrient source. They're heading there, and it takes them a long time to get there, but that's their goal, and that's where they're heading. Yeah.
See, I think if you're a plant lover, you should be a carnivore.
Yeah,
and
save the plants.
Save the plants, right?
Yeah, save the plant.
Why would you?
Now, see, you bring up a very good point. You've just
Yeah.
turned that right upside down, haven't you?
Yeah,
Save the plants. Hey, what are you doing?
Yeah,
Plants communicate. They can talk.
Yeah,
they have feelings.
Yeah, of course they
Just
do.
because they can't move,
yeah. Just because they can't
Or move very
speak.
slow.
right?
Yeah.
Let's see.
Kim?
Dr. Dean hypnotized you, Brian? What does that mean?
Was that for the principal?
Hold on
Was that the principal from
That was-
your elementary school where you played?
He came. He
drums?
came to our school and did a show.
Those are fun,
And-
right?
yeah, and I was just in the audience, and he brought me up on stage.
Did you do it?
Yeah, I did it. Yeah.
And did you get
I-
hypnotized?
Yeah, it's when they say hypnotized, it's basically a very relaxed feeling very
what they
positive, and just
And
very
you'll do whatever
know,
they say.
well, to a degree.
Right.
You're not going to go out and murder somebody. I mean, you can get a little out there, a little weird, but you can feel very. It's mostly positive, And what's interesting when I did that, I knew everybody was out there,
Right.
but I was in my own little world. It
Yeah.
was like
You didn't
what?
care if you were
I
embarrassing
didn't care.
yourself.
Didn't care.
Yeah.
But fortunately, I knew how to play the drums, and he knew I did. Dr. Dean knew that I knew how to play. So he figured, you know what, let's bring you down. Let's see what you can do tonight. That's a lot. Well, I'm
See, I
surprised
think
Kevin
so.
remembers
Basically, what it was doing was just giving you permission to do something you'd like to do anyway.
Yeah.
But
That's a good way to put it.
You could use it as an excuse. Hey, I was hypnotized.
that. You know
Yeah.
what? That's a very good, John, that's good. I never
Yeah.
thought about that, but that's exactly right. Giving you permission for something that you want to do or can do anyway. And Kevin's got a great memory. That's a long time ago.
That stuck with him, huh? That was an important time in his life.
I
right
do
there.
remember the next day at school, walking down the hallway, everybody was looking at me.
Yeah.
Everybody was. I'm like, what's wrong? Am I dressed funny? Am I doing something?
You weren't wearing any clothes.
Wasn't
the hypnotized person told you not
it's
to
the
wear
roll
clothes
of
to school.
toilet paper he was dragging behind him?
Yeah,
Hey.
something like that. Exactly.
Kim in Tucson is talking about healing gardens and
Oh yeah, sure.
and how gardens are good for temperaments and things like that. And we've had people who on the show before who specialized in horticultural therapy, which is a degree you can get
Yeah.
now,
Mhm.
and how gardening can be used to help heal people. So it's been a few years since we've had someone like that. So maybe, Tiger, we can look at bringing
Yeah.
someone on in the future.
Now, let me ask you a question regarding that, because the healing gardens that people kind of specialize in are, maybe they're going to install one at a hospital where you walk in and there's these elements in the garden that help you feel calm or peace, fragrances, things like that. But I think more, of a healing thing is more of the environment, because for me, Big Sur, walking through those trees or into a meadow in that area, that seems like healing to me. Like, I don't know, you know what I mean?
Very cathartic.
Yeah, because
Yeah, but what happens if you live in the city?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
And
I
you
mean,
can't get out
you can't
to
get
Big
out
Sur.
there, but
Right.
But I mean, that being able to walk in those big environments,
Sure.
those are fascinating to me. I don't feel that same way when I walk into the desert. So, it's got to be that specific kind of.
Or is that just something you're more drawn to? As an
it is
individual?
me. It is me
Right.
for sure. Like, everybody's different.
Depends the time of year you walk into the desert. If you're walking in a Death Valley in July, it's 118.
Yeah, not so good.
Not
Hey,
so
Ron's got a
good.
question, John.
Uh,
Right below Carla.
yeah. By the way, Carla's quote was
Yeah.
kind of nice, or her comment. She said the Bible says that even the stars sing, so why not the plants?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's easy.
Ron says that we're getting towards the cooler days of fall. What do you need to do for our hybrid Bermuda lawns before they hibernate, Tiger?
All right. Well, it's getting ready to overseed if you're going to do that, right? I mean, so
Depending on where you live, right?
depending on where you live, the
If you want to
annual
keep
rise.
it, you're talking about if you want to keep it green all winter.
Good point. Yeah. Some people just let their lawns go dormant, and in preparation for dormancy, you start to cut back on water. You don't fertilize. You do a good mow, and then you maybe aren't going to mow for the next 3-4 months. But if you're trying to keep it green, a good thing to do is a low mow. Drop down your annual ryegrass
How low do you mow?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
as low as you can go.
Lomo, I like it.
You
Lomo
know,
lawn service.
well, because the issue with when you're overseeding with annual ryegrass is that you cannot mow it for 3 or 4 weeks. So if you don't mow it low enough, it's going to be a challenge for that ryegrass to grow if the Bermuda is shading it or covering it still at a high level. So you do a good mow that's low, put down the ryegrass, rake it, water it. Some people will recommend a great time of year to put down like a top coat seed covering. And then you just got to keep it wet. You got to keep it wet for about 2 weeks. That ryegrass will begin to come up. When it holds firm in the ground, maybe about 3 or 4 weeks later, then you can actually start to mow that. And then you have your normal lawn from there through the wintertime, depending on where you're at again, like John mentioned, because ryegrass will not grow in those really cold environments. So you just have to have a dormant lawn.
Now, if you're just mowing your lawn in general,
Mm-hmm.
should you leave the grass clippings on there or rake them up?
You should leave the grass clippings on there.
Because a lot of people like to rake it up to give it a nice clean look.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I raked it up because I didn't know any better. But then I hear you should let those clippings fall back
They're
into the
mulch.
soil, right?
They're
As
mulch.
Right.
Yeah, and just like Nick had mentioned, when they prune their almonds and when they prune their grapes, they leave all those clippings right there in the rows, and then it turns into mulch.
Okay.
And it's a great, because that's what mulch. That's what you're buying that when you buy a bagged compost, right? It's decomposing plant matter. So it is good to leave the clippings if you're on a regular basis. Yes.
Hey, Darlene mentions that she talks to her plants.
Good.
And she said that they're a living thing. She said, I have a friend to talk to her plants, but I can't say on air what she told them if they didn't grow.
That's funny. It's funny the things that you probably say to your plants.
Yeah.
Well, Lisa, now that you mentioned that, Lisa said she just apologizes to them all. I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry.
Sorry I didn't water you.
Yeah.
I think Jerry Seinfeld once said that he's never killed a plant, but he's had a lot of plants that have committed suicide in his presence.
Exactly. I think that's probably the most common thing that I say to my plants is I'm sorry.
we have to take a break. We've got one more segment coming up. It's our shortest one, so do stay with us as we slowly wrap things up for this Labor Day show, Labor Day weekend here on Garden America. We are back. Final segment. Good show. Great show. We thought it was going to be a decent show, but as you mentioned, Tiger, turned into be a great show.
Yeah. Well done.
More than adequate. It's a more than adequate show.
Yeah.
Dell wants to know what to do with clay soils. He's going to he's going to put a bed in the ground, and he wants to know, should he dig out the clay and replace it if he wants a bed in the ground?
Well, that sounds like a beast of a job.
Yeah, I would. You can give me your recommendation, but what I would do would be to just try to work in as much organic material as possible.
Yep. Yeah, I would amend it. Use humic acid. There's the John and Bob's product, Penetrate.
Yep.
Yeah, Penetrate's a great product.
You know, and just do your best to amend it. I mean, all these people will say that, like, oh, I'm just going to dig out all this dirt and then put in new stuff. I'm like,
it's a lot of work for nothing. Yeah.
You don't need to do all that.
Yeah. You know, we've explained this many times on the show, but we'll do it again for Dell, that clay particles are extremely small compared to a sand particle. You know, clay particles like Pluto, and sand particles like Jupiter.
Yeah, that's good.
So because they're so small, they bind together and don't allow oxygen to get in between them.
Which makes it so hard, obviously, right?
Right. Yes, I see what you're doing there.
Well, you know, pounding the...
Yes,
yeah, okay.
I get it.
Okay.
So, where was I? Oh, so you've got adding all this organic material increases microbial, bacteria, fungus activity in the soil. And the way that a bacteria moves is the same way a snail or a slug moves. They put out a little mucus trail and they kind of glide over it. Mm-hmm. So if you're a bacteria and you're moving through the soil over a clay particle, you're putting a little mucus around that clay as you travel. So it's separating one particle from another. So the more bacteria in the soil from organic material, the more movement you have and the more the clay is going to break up.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a clay particle being smaller than a grain of sand.
Oh, much smaller.
So
it's like a powder.
So you could say that there are...
It was Pluto versus Jupiter, if you were listening.
There are more stars in the sky than there are clay particles in the entire world. That's a better analogy than grains of sand.
I don't know if that's true. Yeah. I think that's something you just made up.
Yeah. But you've heard the analogy. You know, there's more stars than there are grains of sand in all the beaches of the world.
Is that something Neil deGrasse Tyson would have said?
Oh, that's...
I always confuse him with Neil Patrick Harris. I think that's my problem.
That might be the funniest thing you've said in 6 months.
Completely different. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But no, I think, okay, so here's the other thing I think people get lost on, okay, is they just want to completely remove their soil and add new soil. And
they think it's like starting over again.
Well,
that's got to be the mindset, right?
Not always that new soil is as good as the old soil in the sense of there's value to that clay as well because it's heavy. It holds things. You know, if you just put compost, it's very light and it doesn't hold water.
Aren't you taking out anything that might be beneficial to begin with in that old soil, maybe?
I mean, yes, you are, but
yeah, but Tiger's talking about if you put in a tree into loose, light soil and you get any kind of breeze,
right, it's
just going to blow it right over.
Yeah, or if you water it and the water just falls straight through to the bottom.
Getting back to Dell's question, maybe you don't need to do all that.
Yeah, so that's why, John and I, we agree that just amending. So use organic fertilizers, use humic acid, use Penetrate, use, compost maybe when planting, but to completely dig out an area and then redo it, I don't think is needed. And that goes for clay. I also agree with that for heavy DG or rocky soil. Just
decomposed granite,
just amend it. And later on down the road, I mean, I have much more success with how and what I fertilize with later than even the beginning as well, where you fertilize with organic fertilizers and all those bacteria microbes are in there that John mentioned that are going to do that work for you down the road. Yeah.
Lenore wants to know when the best time for her to plant a lawn would be. She's in canyon country, so should it go in fall?
Yeah. I mean, I would say even maybe winter, because even in the fall you have
late fall, right?
Yeah,
after Santa Ana's are done.
Yeah. Just because you want it to be, you want it to be the shortest daylight hours, and you want to get the most maximum amount of moisture that you can possibly before the summertime. So
with shorter daylight hours, the soil won't dry out as fast.
yes. Yeah. So
Yeah.
what are we looking at? December?
I would say canyon country maybe first week in November.
Okay. Yeah.
End of October. I know that we've been talking about maybe planting some a lawn area at my house, and we were looking at end of October, first of November.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
Are sod companies still in business?
Is what company?
Sod companies.
Oh, barely. I think there's 2 of them out there.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough.
You know, when I
spot.
remodeled a house in Pacific Beach and moved in years ago, I planted real grass.
Yeah.
I didn't go for the sod. I waited and I was patient.
You seeded it and then just waited for it to
Just
grow.
to come up all thin when they're real, new,
Yep.
real thin, and you're thinking, how's this ever going to work? And then it fills in.
Yeah, the problem though is that weeds come up with the grass seed.
I didn't have that problem much, but I remember not going the sod route. Maybe it was because it was cheaper. I don't know.
Way cheaper.
Yeah, maybe that's why.
Sod, I think, is like $1 a square foot now. I mean, you can get a can of seed that'll cover 100 square feet for
exactly
$15.
We've got a minute. We should also tell people we are off next week.
Yes.
So a good time to go back and listen to previous shows, be it on our Facebook page. But if you go to our Facebook page, you're going to get that first 5 minutes of silence. So it's better to go to our YouTube channel, Garden America Radio Show. It starts right off the bat.
I appreciate the sounds of silence, though.
Those moments.
Can you tell me why silence is golden?
That's a poser.
Tremolos, 1967. I think that's going to do it.
All right.
So thank you for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your Labor Day weekend and everything you have in
Labor
store.
Day, everybody.
Yeah, happy Labor Day. Be safe. We're off next week, but again, many opportunities to watch previous shows to catch up. And we'll be back again a week from next Saturday here on Garden America. For the entire crew, Tiger Palafox, John Bagnasco, I'm Brian Main. Good to see you. Thank you for listening to us, Biz Talk Radio. See you in 2 weeks here on Garden America.